SLA, when they took Patty Hearst, they had demanded that the Hearst family give, I think it was $2 million or $4 million worth of food to poor people. That was a lot of money at that time. Much more in 1974, roughly, I think that's when that happened. And they had asked Glide Church and others to be responsible for distributing the food. They wanted to give it away to Native Americans, Latinos, Asians, and black folk. Somebody's calling me. So that was what they asked for. And they had asked Glide to give it out. Glide was not really equipped to do that. It wasn't set up, and they didn't have the benefit of somebody else tried. And it got rather chaotic, and they called them food riots and stuff like that, because people didn't wait for distribution. Some of them just went on trucks and started taking stuff. Our position was, number one, well, first of all, the government and everybody was saying, a lot of black leaders, some, not a lot, a few black leaders were saying, well, black people will not accept the food. Poor people won't accept food that comes to them that way. This was a very difficult time. I believe the president was Richard Nixon at the time. And folk were hurting. Folk were hurting financially, economically in this country. And we had a press conference that said, that's a lie, we'll take it. And our community will take it because all the food we eat comes from some capitalist somewhere. So what's the difference? The folks who sell us our food are robbing other countries and places, so, you know, however it comes. So I guess the SLA saw that. And when it didn't work out, they then asked us if we would be responsible for distributing food. Now you gotta understand, we had just come out of state college experience where we had the Third World Liberation Front, the White Strike Support Committee, and the Black Student Union. So all we did, we had friends who lived in every pocket that were part of the Third World Liberation Front, White Strike Support Committee, or whatever. We just went to our friends and asked them to put together a distribution center. The reason we did it, we knew that the power the Hearst family had, the food was going to be given out. And if we couldn't manage it, it was going to be an excuse to send the National Guard into the cities to distribute the food, because there had even been talk of that. So we said, well, to protect our people, let's do it. And so we just went to folk, and so, you know, we had friends that from the strike in East Palo Alto, Donald Smothers and his folk from Nairobi College. I just got to see him a couple years ago when I was in Philly, and it was really funny. He was a real short guy. He's a real short man who gave up the Olympics as a wrestler in his weight class. The man who finally represented this country, Donald had beat him every time they had wrestled, but he gave it up because of the student strike. Another friend of ours that had a chance to play pro football gave it up because of the student strike. That's why they said we were serious. I was a baseball player before I went in the Army. I was at state after I got out. The strike was kind of over, but we were still quite hostile towards the administration and the athletic department because they had been our enemies. So me and a buddy of mine show up one day with our spikes on because I wanted to give baseball one more shot. I was trying to negotiate a contract with the White Sox and Phillies when I got drafted. So we show up one day at school, me and a buddy, because we had heard the day before that they were going to have tryouts that day with the team. I show up with my spikes over my shoulder, my glove, had my baseball jersey on, and walking across campus, a couple of brothers from BSU said, where y'all going with all that? So we going to try out. Brothers, we boycotting athletic department. Damn. So there went baseball. Didn't try. So one of the reasons they said we were serious. So we went to these people and asked them. We had people in Santa Rosa for the Native American community there. We had friends of ours from the Red Guard and other groups in Chinatown. We Richmond. So we did it, and they had designated communities where they wanted it given out. And we had people there. And because these people were from the community, because they had relationships in that community, they knew the people. So we were able to give it out without one problem, even though we knew there were agents provocateurs that was sent in to be disruptive. Folk wouldn't go for it because they knew all of us. We were doing it out of Sacred Heart Church, was one of the locations. And that was the only place there was the least bit of trouble. One night, we were giving it away, next to last distribution, I think, or may have been the last one. And folk would start, now, to show you how folk wouldn't accept the food, people would start lining up the night before. We would select the food. We'd go into down on lower 3rd Street, below between AT&T and Hunters Point, the old, what they used to call Butchertown. They had all the meat lockers down there that the supermarkets and all everybody used. Joe Rudolph, the late Joe Rudolph, who used to general manage Cape, he and I would go in those meat lockers and select the food. Because one day that we were getting ready for a distribution, and we ran, and one of the people who worked for the opposition, who worked for the people, for the Hearst people, but it was a brother who pulled us aside and handed me something really big. He said, put this under your coat. We always wore big top coats at that time. I slid it under the coat. I looked up. It was supposed to be a ham or roast beef, I can't remember. But it was too soft. We opened it, and this meat company, I believe it was Armour, but don't quote me. They had taken fat, pure fat, out of the rendering plant and packaged it and shaped it like hams or roast, and that's what they were going to give out. First of all, you have to understand the insidiousness of this. That was going to get that girl killed. If we had passed out fat to poor people, because this was early on, she hadn't turned yet, they was going to kill that girl. One, we didn't want to be responsible for that. But two, we also did not want to, we didn't want that to go to our people. And we also didn't want what might ensue if we gave people. And finally, if we had given that out, there would have, absolutely, wouldn't have been able to hold another one in peace. So, but this just, and so we showed it. This was the coldest one. We showed it to Randolph Hearst. He flipped. Because whoever he was, whatever he was, he loved his daughter. I'm certain Hitler loved his kid. Donald Trump probably loved his kid. Well, his daughter, I think he loves in a kind of strange way. Exactly. But, much differently than I love my daughter. But anyway, but you know, and he said something that was so telling, which really shows you that capitalism basically has no friends. I don't know what I am, but I know capitalism, because he said, the very people, he said to me, the very people that I would think would be supportive, because they could be in my same situation, because they were wealthy too. It could have been their daughter, did this to me. We had to tell him things like, when they would be trying to drive a hard bargain, told him, you got one problem. You don't have their daughter, they have yours. You don't have any bargaining chips. People from across the country, every hustler, so-called radical revolutionary hustler in the country, showed up to try to get some of that $2 million. One group came and laid out a whole plan. They had the board, the whiteboard, whatever it was in those days, and they showed us how we get them this money. They're gonna go down south and gonna have farms, and we be able to feed the people forever. And we listened to their whole spiel, and we wasn't preaching in those days. And he said, so they said, we just sat there and we listened, and we said, okay, they finished. We said, okay. They said, well, what y'all think? They said, it's beautiful. We told them, it looks good. You only lacking one thing. I said, what's that? We said, your own motherfucking hostage. That's their hostage. You can't take their hostage and negotiate over the SLAs. You don't have to get us to buy in. Get the SLA to buy in. And if they buy in, we'll do what they say. They also came to us. My car broke down one night. The police stopped me. I had a warrant for a ticket, took me to jail, and everybody in the world panicked. So many people who I didn't know, but I could tell were some kind of big feds or something, came to my cell, are you okay? We had nothing to do with it, blah, 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 blah. Were they harassed? I said, man, I just had a ticket, that's all. So because my car broke down, Hearst representatives told us, we could, look, we'll buy y'all some cars if you're having that trouble to make this happen. Any kind you want. Uh-oh, there's my Cadillac. That was the inference that was made. Any kind you want. We'll put two-way radios in them for you if you need them, whatever you need. Told him, said, first of all, after this is over, I can't ride around with no two-way radio in my car. That looked too much like the police. Number two, we'll make it on our own. Because we also were afraid because the law says anyone who profits from a felony is committing a felony. And we wasn't gonna get caught up in that trick bag. So anyway, that's just background. It's going to later on, hopefully someday, find its way into the book. Some of the more stories. Afterwards, it was one of the funniest experiences I've ever been involved in my life. There's some funny stories that came out. It was scary. We knew that one, we were being followed everywhere we went. We knew there were several entities that were surveilling us. We found out later because one of my buddies did his Freedom of Information Act. We knew the FBI, Secret Service, those people, CIA most likely. But we found out later, the military, the Navy, the Army, their intelligence folks were following us and involved in us. We knew that every meeting we were in, they were in there. And also the SLAs, surveillance people. And they'd already proved they would kill folks. So it was an amazing, amazing time. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit. I'm gonna just pass this around. You all can look at it. I want to tell you a little story, and I hope I didn't tell it last time. If I did, y'all stop me. Just you might want to look at that. What's that, 85 or 75%? You see now, 85%, yeah. Anyway, but 85% of black boys can't read, basically. Can't read. Just gotta, I don't know if the implications of that hits y'all like it hits me. But what that large of a segment of our population can't read. And the other thing you've got to keep in mind, if we know that, the government knows that. Mm-hmm. And if they are government, they have to have a plan for that. And the plan doesn't seem to be to do the remedial kinds of things to make it work, so they gotta have another plan. And that's why they test third grade reading scores in California to determine how many prisons they're gonna need in the future. And you just gotta really think of the evilness. I have a daughter who's ready to be 38 in November. And in the second, third grade, teachers told us she's having some problem with reading. I think now she's just really a stubborn person. Something ticked her off. But what we did is we got her tutor, they put her in reading workshop or whatever they call it at the elementary school, Lakeview, across from the Grand Lake Theater. And she's fine. But what I'm saying, we knew there was a problem and we addressed it. We did not start preparing how we're going to take care of her when she gets to be an adult, because she won't be able to read. We said we'll fix it so when she gets to be an adult, she'll be able to read. And the government doesn't do that. So the only plan they can be is more and more prisons. Because their idea, which is true, that if you can't read, it's going to lead to frustration. And by the time you get to be an adult, that frustration is so great, you're probably going to, one, commit crimes, two, out of frustration, but two, out of survival. You won't be able to eat unless you get involved in criminal enterprise. You can't even go in the army. You can't pass people the test. So this is what, so years ago, 2010, I went to visit my ancestral home, Rennesville, Oklahoma, 90 miles northeast of Tulsa, all black. Oklahoma at one time had 28 all black towns. Conventional wisdom believed that had Lincoln not been killed, he was going to make Oklahoma a black state. There were a lot of black people in the Oklahoma land rush. It was post-slavery. I've even heard that there were more black people in the land rush than white people. I don't know if that's true, but I do know there were a lot. And when I went to Rennesville, I found out things I didn't know. The town was intentional. Two men, Reverend Owen Robinson and William Rentis, R-E-N-T-I-E-S, Rentisville. They had 2 parcels of land they put together for the town. Then they had copies of flyers they sent out all over the country saying, colored citizens, come and live in your own town. So it was intentional. So I'm in church that Sunday. It's a family reunion, the side of my family I didn't know that well. So my cousin Kevin and I went, had a good time. We're in church on Sunday. And most black family reunion, y'all go to church on Sunday. Even if you don't go at home, you go to church when you have the reunion. And you don't want nobody to tell the folks that you don't go to church. So the church is over, come out the pulpit. And I walk out, and the lady walks up to me, Mother Nears, 92 years old, retired school teacher, lived in Rennesville all her life, drove 90 miles, one way, 180 miles, every day to teach, but she didn't want to leave Rennesville. So she says to me, boy, what's your name? I think I remember. No, ma'am, I left here, I was 7 years old, or whatever. 6, you couldn't remember me. What's your name? I said, Arnold. She said, no, it's not. I know my name. But I also know better than to argue with a 92-year-old church mother. So all I said was, yes, ma'am. She said, your name is Butch. Now, if you call me Butch, you're either blood relative on my mama's side, or you're from Rennesville. The only people ever called me. But then I remembered later, yes, she would remember me because she was my mother's friend. And my mother was pregnant in 1943 out of wedlock. That would be a big thing. You would remember your friend, your buddy, who got pregnant back then, and the baby. So I said, Mother Nears, I always wanted to know something. I never got a chance to ask my grandfather, because he's one of the founders of the town. I said, why did those people back then, those black people, want their own town? And she said, in what I consider the most beautiful bit of understatement that I have ever heard, is where you see baby, they just believe that if they live with the rest of them, meaning white people, she shook her head and said, it just wasn't going to work out. And it has not for us. Living with white people has not worked out for us. San Francisco. Let me explain. If Oklahoma was a black state, your population couldn't go from right near 100,000 when I got here to 30,000. Those old folk back then, sometimes that we even in the black community ridicule us, they had more sense on an accident that we have on purpose. They knew it wasn't going to work out. They knew they could not survive in a place where they had absolutely no control and no political control over their daily lives. We still don't. We have London Breed, who, in my estimation, does a tremendous job. But she's got to almost sell her soul to get anything done for her community. Because the people she negotiates with don't see the benefit of it. They're getting everything they need out of us without doing anything. We have to buy their products because they closed down our shopping areas that we owned and controlled in this town. When I got here, there were 3 black men owned gas stations in Fillmore. One of them was on, it was the last one. There used to be the gas station on Shell and Steiner, on Shell station on Bush and Steiner. That's a black man on that. Then they built some apartments and they got that place where you can buy sound, we used to call it stereo, I don't know what to call it now. But equipment that played, that was gas
across the
station.
street from Sweet Maple, where people line up.
Yeah, right over there. Then there was the, then we had,
Wonderland.
right by where Winterland used to be, right across the street. We had that place. We had, then there was one on the Mohawk, was on Fillmore and Bush, maybe. I think that's Bush. Where Walgreens is now. Yeah, Walgreens. Yeah, where Walgreens is. So you had a thriving business district. When my friends who grew up here, I've only lived here 50 years. It just passed the 3rd of September. I got here 50 years ago. But with friends who grew up here, when they went school shopping, they didn't go downtown, they went on Fillmore Street. First of all, you couldn't try on clothes in downtown San Francisco. If you wanted to, you could buy it. They'd take your money. They wasn't crazy about you being there. But you couldn't try it on if you were black. Now, whether you could try it on if you were Asian or not, I'll have to ask some of my Asian friends. I doubt it. You know anything about Chinese history of San Francisco? It is extremely ugly. Extremely ugly. I just read an article about lynch parties roaming through San Francisco looking for Chinese people. One particular event, they used the same thing they used to lynch so many black men. These supposedly, they're looking for 2 young Chinese men that said or did something untoward to a white woman. And, you know, and one of the things that, and I'll say this, Albert Einstein said, if you don't know about him, you need to learn. He said that any white person who is not actively opposing racism is complicit. I didn't know much about that side of Albert Einstein until I talked to Danny Glover. He's an expert in it, by the way. And we were at Third Baptist Church one night and he started talking about it. If you had asked Albert Einstein what he was, he most likely would not have said, I'm a scientist. He would have said, I'm an anti-racist. He at one time was the president of the largest, the National Anti-Negro Lynching Society, or something like that. That's not the exact name, but it was a name like that. That's what he was. And he also spent time teaching in black elementary schools. Someone with his mind. and black colleges and other places he would go and lecture. Haven't you ever noticed that you have never heard anything, the way he's lifted up as this brilliant man, you never heard one stitch about his personal life. They only portray him as a kind of bumbling, forgetful professor, nutty professor type kind of guy. Like he would have trouble getting out of the house, you know, with matching socks. You know, never thinking that might not have been important to him. Well, you know, just he had socks on. But the fact of the matter is, you never hear that. And it's set up so that if you do, well, you already know he's kind of crazy anyway. It's just like in elementary school when they told me John Brown. Now, for what happened, I blame my parents. But anyway, when they told me John Brown was insane because he tried to free the slaves through violence and using violence, I asked the question, why was he insane for using violence, but George Washington was? Now, listen, I was not being a jerk. The teacher thought I was. I was a jerk in school all my life, but I wasn't being a jerk right then.
Right.
And so I got sent to the principal's office for that. And they sent a note home, because that wasn't the first time that I'd been sent to the principal's office, right? And so the next morning I woke up, my mom says, she's home. They left when it was still dark. I said, oh, I gotta catch the bus. She said, no, I'm taking you to school. I'm going with you. Went to the principal's office, and my mother went off on the principal, you know, about that incident, because I really thought the teacher had an answer, because I thought teachers knew everything. So I thought, okay, he's insane, I just need to know why. And so my mom not only did that, but she told me I didn't have to go to class that day. And we went and got ice cream. And this was, you know, in my family, school was God. You didn't miss school. I didn't cut a class in school till my senior semester. I was scared to cut class, because I thought the deal was, we'll work, you go to school. And I figured if I broke that, I couldn't live there no more. So it was the deal. But as we were walking out the door, my mom turns around to the principal and says, my son is still waiting for an answer. Still waiting for an answer. So we are in this place, and we have not yet dealt with, in this nation, the issue of racism in this city. Now, I started out with that paper that I passed. When she said it hasn't worked out for us, living with white people. The worst integration is the worst thing that ever happened to us when it comes to economics and education. Let me explain something to you. We are the only people in America that have ever been forced to integrate. Asians have not integrated. They've assimilated, and they've assimilated well. But when Asians come to you, they come to you with culture intact. They come to you with control. Gotta get this. They come to you with control of the economic, you know, they gotta fight for it all the time, but they come to you with some control of their economic value. They come to you with some control of their educational system. They used to have Saturday schools where they even learned culture. We used to have it too. We called it Sunday school, but we quit going. Even though it had been proven through studies that I read years ago that black children who were in Sunday school came to school further ahead than the kids who didn't, and they achieved better throughout school. But that's another story. We cut that loose because we quit going to church because white people don't go to church no more. So, you know, we want to be like them. So that, to do hip stuff. I'm committed to where I go, but there are churches that do stuff that I'd rather do on Sunday than we do. You know, that's just, you know, I'm trying to get us to that place, but, you know, I'm praying. So it is absolutely essential that you begin to understand something. We do not control anything in our community. I think I said this last time, let me say it again. Let's decide today that the Chinese community can own no more businesses. Can't own anymore. No more restaurants, no more construction companies, no more architectural companies. I said that because a good friend of mine, Frank Fong, has his architecture company is in 1426, Fillmore. No more businesses. Let's say we said that today, you and I had that power. What's today, Wednesday? Don't you think by Friday, if all the Chinese people now had to go out and get jobs from people that don't look like them, do you think by Friday they might have an employment problem too? Like we have in the African American community, the Latino community? How many black people do you think in this town cash a check written by a black person? I'm not talking about a CFO, I'm talking about an owner, a business owner. The check that they pay their rent or their mortgage, send their kids to college on. How many? Minuscule, right?
Very few.
Very few. It didn't used to be that way. There were thousands of black people in this city working for black people. Thousands who worked for them for 20 and 30 years and retired. It's amazing what has happened in this town. And always remember, if you don't remember nothing else, I say, because it's happening to white people, the middle class, the so-called middle class, every day now. It's called a transfer of wealth. The foreclosure crisis down in Stockton, where you still have whole housing tracts that never got sold. They were bought up. It used to be money stayed with the middle class, money stayed with the middle class. If your family was foreclosed on, unfortunately, my family bought it. So while the money wasn't in your hands, it was still in the same kind of hands, the same income level. That didn't happen with this foreclosure crisis. Right. Those homes were bought out by corporate interests, mostly foreign. Bought up those homes and those tracts and things. Stockton was the most foreclosed city in the United States during that foreclosure crisis. They had articles, I read one really good one talking about the new ghost towns where they had these old tracts. They were really eerie at night because they were empty. Nobody lived there. And yet they were guarded and protected so the homeless couldn't move in. You got homeless and you got empty houses nobody's using. Right. And somehow that connection don't get made. So you got to understand they are taking out. Now we always, back when I attended State College in my real radical days, we always talked about a transfer of wealth, a redistribution of wealth. It's happening. It's just going the wrong direction. We wanted it to come the other way, top down. It's going top up. All right, are y'all got that? Unfortunately, we're almost out of time, and then y'all got to get back to work. I don't want nobody to get fired. I know this is my bane. I didn't get very far. In fact, I didn't look at my notes. I didn't get very far in what we were to talk about. I hope what I talked about is helpful. Cheryl may be patient enough to do it again. We'll see. We'll wait a while, but it is, or wait for the book.
I've been waiting on the book 20 years.
20 years. But it's going to happen. Faith, race, and dirt.
What is it?
We're getting there. I finally got a
It's
title.
not there yet. He got a title. That's it. It's not started to write it. It's all still up here.
No. I got the first half on tape. It's the second half that I'm having difficulty with. But I finally got somebody, and that's because I don't like research. And I really, to be honest and to write honestly, I have to do some research and refresh my memories. It's going to be more of an anecdote. It wouldn't pass for a dissertation or thesis because I'm not going to have to research. But I may add the footnotes to make it that at some point. But I've got Thurman White's son is helping me. He just finished a book. You remember Thurman? His son, Akil, the oldest boy, is a PhD now. And the youngest boy is a high school coach, so they're doing well. The oldest boy teaches at San Jose City and San Jose State. And I want to talk to you about it too. We will be presenting at the African American Art and Cultural Complex. He's written a film on fatherhood. He said he finished Morehouse and got his master's at Harvard. He finally had a job, a car, his own apartment, and he said he's ready to roll. He said he's ready to party. He said the ladies was waiting. He's been studying all these years, and she says, I'm pregnant. And that was not in his plan. So he talks about that. And he's interviewed all these other young black fathers. And he does the film. He did it at Baby Opera House. I was there. And he invites him. He has like a couple of rappers and other young men, teachers, who talk about what it's like being a father. Some who had real good experience, some who had bad experience, some who had mothers they couldn't get along with, and how do you diminish yourself and your ego for your child's sake, and all those kinds of things. And so we want to present it, and you all I'd like y'all to be a part of that, because it's a really good thing. And so we'll talk about it later. But when we do it, I'll make sure that Sister Davis's office knows about it. They can let all you know. And it's good for you all to see it, because you may, if you don't have now, you may have children one day, and you may have to deal with the father. And if you married or unmarried, you got to deal with it. And it is not. I am a father, and I wasn't married to the mother, and it's a challenge. It is a challenge. Somebody said something to me once. They said, well, you have a good relationship with your daughter. And I just think it's wonderful the way you and her mother cooperated in raising her. And I said, yeah, I had to bite my tongue a whole lot of times to make that happen. And this woman friend of mine said, yeah, and I bet she did too. Y'all know something? It had never occurred to me. And that's the danger. We can get so self-centered and so carried away with ourselves. Because I think I'm good. I'm good. That it had never occurred to me that she bit her tongue on some of the crazy stuff I said. Just because, and I've tried to tell some other friends, every battle, every difference doesn't have to be Waterloo.
Yeah.
You can let some things go. For the sake of children, marriage, or love, you can even let the other side win sometimes and walk away. It's okay. It's okay. Because before you get in a desperate argument, ask yourself, how much do you really care? See, me, I like arguing, but I never argue with significant other. It's my form of abuse, and I'm working on it. I don't argue. I just leave. That's another story, and I will not burden you with my therapy session. But thank you for it thus far, and send me your invoice, and I'll pay you. I don't go over $350. I will not pay you more than $350 an hour, unless you have a license. Unless you're a licensed therapist. Anyway, thank you all so much.